Hello, I'm Ashley Hefner, Advanced Planning Manager for the City of Culver City. Culver City is in the process of updating its general plan, which will help guide how our city government makes decisions and serves residents over the next 25 years. The general plan covers topics we all care deeply about, including housing, the economy, climate adaptation and resiliency, health and equity, transportation, arts and culture, parks and recreation, urban design, and so much more. I'm pleased to introduce a new video series where our team of expert consultants will share key findings from their research on existing conditions in Culver City. The city will use their insights and feedback from the community to shape policies in the updated general plan. A mini survey accompanies each video for you to share your thoughts on the content presented in the videos. We need to hear from you to create a general plan for Culver City that's driven by our community values. So please share the videos and surveys with others. This is a challenging time, and we thank you for your continued interest in the general plan update. Community engagement related to the general plan update will continue. For the time being, it will transition to an online format through methods such as these informational videos and surveys to gather input. Thank you, and please enjoy the video.
Hello, my name is Eric Yarkovich, and I'm an associate principal at Ramey & Associates. We are working with Culver City on the general plan update. Today, I'll be talking about climate change, the potential impacts of climate change in Culver City, who the most sensitive populations are, and some opportunities to address those issues. California is already experiencing the effects of a changing climate, and these impacts are projected to worsen, even with only moderate increases in greenhouse gas emissions. Some of the information presented today might seem overwhelming or a little daunting. However, the solutions to climate change are workable and cost-effective. They can improve the quality of our life while limiting and adapting to the changes in our climate. However, scientific, engineering, and organizational solutions are not enough. We must be motivated and empowered to adopt the needed changes while addressing the underlying causes of why people are sensitive to the impacts of climate change. As a long-range policy document, the general plan presents an opportunity for us to come together as a community to develop creative solutions that enable all Culver City residents to thrive now and in the future. First of all, a quick note. This presentation will not cover all the basics of climate science. There are a lot of great resources available if you'd like to do some additional reading, and this is just a small sampling of those. If you have questions about climate science, the trends and hazards, or the potential impacts of climate change, I would encourage you to check out these resources and more. To start, it's important to begin by looking at the observed record to understand future climate change. For Culver City, we are primarily interested in 4 primary climate hazards: temperature, extreme heat, precipitation, and heavy precipitation, and 3 secondary hazards: drought, air quality, and wildfire. This table shows the historical trend and projected change for each of those climate hazards. We have observed rising temperatures in California and across Southern California, as well as an increase in extreme heat days. In fact, the top 5 warmest years on record were observed in the last 10 years. Climate models anticipate these trends will continue increasing in the future with a very high degree of certainty. While we have observed no significant changes in trends in precipitation or heavy precipitation in California, we know Southern California experiences wide swings in precipitation from year to year, and this variability is expected to continue under climate change with fluctuations between wet years and dry years and periods of drought. Wildfires have increased over the last 30 years in California, particularly in Southern California. Climate models project a continued increase in wildfires with a high degree of certainty. And finally, California and Southern California have made important strides in improving air quality over the last 30 years. However, warmer temperatures and increases in wildfires could roll back some of the improvements that have been made in regional air quality. As I mentioned, during the last century, temperatures have increased in California. Average minimum and maximum temperatures in Southern California rose faster than the state as a whole. Between 1970 and 2006, the average minimum and maximum temperatures in Southern California rose 2.5 degrees across the region. Climate models indicate that those temperatures will continue to rise in Culver City, with annual maximum temperatures projected to increase anywhere between 3.7 and 4.4 degrees by the mid-century, so the time horizon of the general plan, up to 8 degrees by the end of the century. Like warming temperatures, extreme heat events in California and Culver City are becoming more frequent, more intense, and lasting longer. The number of extreme heat days is anticipated to increase significantly across the Los Angeles region during the next century, but more so in inland areas than in coastal cities. By mid-century, Culver City is expected to have 11 extreme heat days. This is the time horizon, again, of the general plan update. I'm often asked, well, why does this matter? Warming can be very nice. Well, this diagram illustrates one simple pathway of how extreme heat affects health. Rising temperatures and more frequent heat waves and extreme heat days can result in heat stress that can cause fatigue, headaches, dizziness, nausea, and confusion. The combination of high heat and high humidity is particularly harmful, leading in some cases to heat stroke and even to death among healthy people. The urban heat island effect can exacerbate extreme heat events in Culver City by increasing local temperatures in very small pockets of the city. And research shows that on days on average that are 10 degrees above the average, deaths from all causes can increase between 3 and 5%. However, we recognize the impacts of climate change are not uniform. The impacts will fall hardest on those who are historically overburdened and under-resourced. In these neighborhoods, factors such as disproportionately poor environmental quality, substandard housing, and the lack of healthcare access will contribute to greater climate risk. The burden is compounded by having fewer resources to prepare for or to recover from the impacts of climate change. When we think of those folks who are most at risk to climate change hazards, we often focus on the social or biological factors that increase risk. Biological factors impact individuals include age, mental health, and physical disabilities. Social factors in our environment can also impact our life, whether there are street trees, whether the housing quality is good, will impact our climate sensitivity. These are important factors, but they also miss a very important fact, which is that many of the social factors are driven by a series of root causes. Historic patterns of housing segregation and income inequality are a few of the factors that influence both social factors and health inequities. The reality is that communities of color are often overburdened with multiple overlapping factors that cumulatively impact not only their health, but also their ability to adapt or respond to climate change. This map illustrates some of the most sensitive and overburdened neighborhoods in Culver City. Clarksdale and Culver West have populations with higher socioeconomic disparities and higher health vulnerabilities, are burdened with higher levels of pollution already, and are at high risks for housing displacement. However, there are other neighborhoods in the city that also face these multiple burdens. On average, Culver City receives about 15 inches of rainfall each year, but it varies significantly between years. The region experiences wide swings in rainfall from year to year, and this variability is expected to continue under climate change with fluctuations between the wet years and the dry years. Southern California's annual variability originates primarily from the fluctuation of the biggest storms, with much of the variability coming from the wettest of the wet days. Drought often happens during the years where you miss a few of those large storms, and the wet years occur when you receive some of those big storms. These are some of those images showing flooding along Ballona Creek in both 2017 and 2019 during some of these heavy rainfall events. As I mentioned, one of the byproducts of this annual variability in rainfall, as well as increases in temperature, are these periods of prolonged drought. This graphic illustrates the different drought classifications over time for Los Angeles County over the last 20 years or so. The darker reds and browns represent periods of extreme or exceptional drought. This graphic highlights the drought between 2012 and 2019 in the county and is considered a harbinger of projected dry spells in the future decades. And this period of prolonged drought was followed by a very wet winter, which illustrates the potential climate volatility that we face in the future. Next, wildfire risk is increasing in Culver City. Wildfire risk is determined by a combination of factors, including precipitation, winds, temperatures, landscape, and vegetation conditions. On the map, you'll see the eastern portion of the city is located in a very high severity fire zone, which includes portions of the Culver Crest neighborhood and the Inglewood oil field. Wildfires have increased over the western United States and in Southern California in recent decades. These wildfires are projected to increase in the future with warmer, drier summers, more Santa Ana winds, and increased vegetation growth that can really create the conditions that are suitable for wildfires. And beyond these direct impacts of fires, wildfires can be a significant source of air pollution in Southern California, as was evidenced by the 2018 Woolsey fire or the more recent Bobcat fire. Wildfires burning within 50 to 100 miles of the city routinely cause air quality to be 5 to 15 times worse than what's normal, and often 2 to 3 times worse than the worst non-fire day of the year. These can impact our social and physical behaviors as well as respiratory health. During the Woolsey fire, for example, the health department advised schools and recreational programs to suspend outdoor activities. So a pause. And as I mentioned at the beginning, some of this information feels very overwhelming, like a problem that we aren't really equipped to solve. However, we think that the solutions to climate change are both workable and cost-effective. But we must be motivated to take action to adopt those needed changes while addressing some of those underlying causes of why people are sensitive to the impacts of climate change. You'll recall this extreme heat and health pathway diagram from earlier in the presentation. So how can we minimize the health impacts of heat? These represent examples of solutions Culver City might consider while addressing the impacts of extreme heat, and several of which are already ongoing within the city. Culver City, in concert with Los Angeles County and other regional and local governments, play a really important role in developing public policy and implementing solutions that address community vulnerability and build climate resilience. Communities routinely take steps to reduce exposure to natural hazards, ensure systems are in place to respond to emergencies, and improve assistance after a hazard event. However, these preparedness and response solutions are often not enough to address the underlying social inequities of residents within communities. Specific short-term measures that prepare communities and reduce hazard vulnerability will be much more effective when coupled with longer-term actions aimed at addressing multiple inequities and that are the sources of an increased climate risk in the most sensitive populations. This includes creating a continuum of activities from reducing hazard risk, improving post-disaster assistance, mitigating and adapting, and then focusing on reducing social inequities. But addressing these social inequities really helps us to further increase community resilience to climate change. This figure illustrates a number of those transformative actions that address many of the root causes of climate vulnerability. Multi-benefit solutions designed to build community resilience through hazard preparedness and climate adaptation with a lens on reducing social inequities should be pursued concurrently. For example, job and skill building training programs in traditionally marginalized communities around green infrastructure or urban forestry are good examples of bringing transformative actions together with adaptive measures. And there are many opportunities in Culver City to consider these multi-benefit strategies around Iona Creek revitalization, green infrastructure, and urban forestry. We can also capitalize on economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic to support a just transition. And finally, these are just a few of the many opportunities that exist that we'll be exploring with you throughout the general plan update process. So thank you for joining me today. Now we want to hear from you. Does this presentation align with your understanding and experiences around climate change? What do you think are the challenges and opportunity for the city that we should focus on? I encourage you to take a 5-minute survey on the project website, www.city.gov/survey. www.pictureculvercity.com to share your ideas with us. Finally, if you have any other ideas or comments, please feel free to contact planning staff. Please be sure to check pictureculvercity.com for project updates and opportunities to get involved. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you for being here today.
Thank you for watching the City of Culver City's General Plan Update video series. For more information about the General Plan Update and opportunities to get involved, visit pictureculvercity.com. Thank you, and stay safe.